become the bloc that we truly want to be, and create a bloc that is unshaken really by other hegemonies and structures within the global economy. Of course, part of the SDGs as well focuses on health. And so an important point came up about how we need to ensure that within the BRICS bloc, we create interventions, particularly leveraging on digital technologies to address issues of health, to address issues of mental health, and to address issues of self-harm. And, a colleague from South Africa raised the point that there's a huge self-harm issue within adolescents in South Africa. And it drew upon a few of the digital health interventions that partners in the BRICS bloc have implemented to ensure that young people have access to mental health services and health services with the ease of clicking a button on your phone through digital innovations, right? And in a country like ours, where we still have issues with resources being made available in undeveloped parts of our country, this is the type of innovation that we need to learn from our BRICS partners on how we can ensure that people in the countryside of our country have access to either apps or systems that allow them to get the help that they need as it pertains to mental health or even health services. Another issue that came up as well as we look at a post-pandemic society from our partners was the issue of food security, and looking at how we can ensure that as a BRICS bloc, we create an ecosystem where we trade with one another as it pertains to the food that we grow and our agricultural system. And a huge thing that came up was how we've got trade deals and agreements such as AGOA that we have with the United States as South Africa. But if we look at the amount of agricultural capacity we have in South Africa to export, whether it's citrus, grains, and other sorts of foodstuffs, we've got a whole market of people in India and Brazil and Russia and China that could be potential trade partners when it comes to our agricultural sector and us securing our food supplies as well in South Africa. And so reimagining a post-pandemic society, colleagues agreed that there's a need to ensure that we create an ecosystem that creates a market for us in terms of exporting our food materials and goods, but also ensuring the food security of all BRICS partners within our system. Another resolution that came up was the formation of a youth council within the BRICS bloc. We've identified that within BRICS, we're represented by our country officials who happen to be senior citizens, to be respectful. And within the BRICS bloc, there is no youth formation that is consistently there to lobby BRICS partners about how we can ensure that all policies and agreements that are drawn up actually take into account the needs of young people within BRICS countries. And so there was an agreement to lobby for a youth cohort or a youth council of some sorts within the BRICS bloc that is consulted upon when it comes to issues that pertain to countries within the global south. There was also a point to say that we need to ensure that within operating our economies as BRICS countries, we look at policies that we can all apply universally across, the BRICS countries. And I think about how South Africa, just looking at exchange rate, we've got a flexible exchange rate. Some countries have fixed ones. And there's so many macroeconomic policies that we have that are quite different from one another that prevent us from wanting to take a loan with this country or host a program with that country. And I mean, our partners from Russia spoke about certain grants that they have for startup entrepreneurs that can be accessible throughout the BRICS sort of cohorts and ecosystem. But there's those little ways of operating our economies that are so vastly different that we need to look at if we want to create a BRICS bloc that can work together to navigate crises that we may face in the future. There was also a remark on the creative economy by one of our South African colleagues and how we need to ensure that within the BRICS bloc, we create space for the creative economy to thrive. And so that did come up. within our conversations. But at the crux of it, to achieve the SDGs and to build resilience post the pandemic, the main aim or the main resolution that was made was to once again create a bloc that cannot be shaken. And I hope that from the resolutions that we have submitted, we draw from that and implement that as we go forward into the next BRICS Youth Summit. I see the chair is chasing me away, so I will end it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Standiwe. I just wanted to loosely translate that Amandla Awetu means power belongs to the people. So it is all in your hands. We're going to be moving to Commission 3. That is going to be led by Luvuyo, which is developing a partnership towards an equitable, just... I'm looking at him because he's got an entire chart. So I'm not sure how he's going to manage, but let's please put our hands together for Luvuyo. Do you need help with holding these for you? Are you okay? All right, sure.
Good afternoon, colleagues, Deputy Minister, NYDA leadership. It really is an honor and a privilege to serve in these commissions today. I also want to thank our commission. We had robust agreements. I'm not going to say debates because I think a lot of the thinking was quite aligned. I also just want to make one remark, and I think I'll start with you, Executive Chair of the NYDA. You know, the Black young women in the leadership here have been phenomenal on stage in the commissions. I think it's great to see more young Black females actually take part and just been mind-blowing contributions. So I would like to give a round of applause for our Black young women. And just also to thank the really positive engagements for our BRICS members who've really contributed quite robustly, and I've also made some really good friends. Okay, great. So I think I'll get straight into it. We obviously were dealing with the equitable, just energy transition. I think what's quite key is, you know, is it equitable? Is it just? And in that transition, is it sustainable? And when we talk about energy, we talk then obviously to the energy mix and ultimately its broader ecosystem. I'm actually glad Honorable Nompendulo was first, because I think one of the key elements we really expanded on was around skills development. I think when we talk about what's happening in the energy transition space, we need to consider, you're right, the livelihoods of the existing jobs. So when we're talking about decommissioning of coal assets, whether that would be a good strategy, and I'll get into that in a moment, the skills that are here and the skills that are required for the green economy. Do we have those skills? Do we have those skills? Are they transferable? How do we go about developing transfer or skills development interventions or programs? And how can we leverage, obviously, from the learnings of those who are ahead of us, the likes of China, India, and Russia, in the various energy group mixes? How can we get those skills transferred here? Because I think some of the learnings, and we saw with the IPPs, that there was great investment in terms of funding, the money left, a lot of the skills were imported, and this goes right across, not just your technical skills from the engineering perspective, but even your support skills, accountants, lawyers. The likes of the Deloitte of the world at the time was bringing in their partners from the US, Spain, Canada, and so forth. So how are we generating the right type of skills that one can also be remaining, but also in the transition of these skills, or rather of the industry, how are we going to then protect or rather create new jobs for young people? So are the academic institutions well positioned for the skills? Do we know what those skills are? So I think then becomes very critical that we address and develop a skills development journey and program that I think was far more elaborated on in the Skills Commission. So the reason I have the sheets, I've got a laptop, I've got my cell phone, I've got my notebook. There's another element around mental health, so my brain is funny. I think in 100 open tabs, but I promise you it's very, very focused when it comes to execution. And I think these notes were for me, they were for the commission, but we have then captured them quite accurately. We've developed what we call the risk mitigation interventions, because I think one of the outcomes that we were very important about is that this is not just another talk shop. We've been in many commissions in the past, and we want to ensure that we've got some practical steps on how we can execute on some of the things we wish to achieve. So there we go. My apologies. So one, I think it was important to also draw a stakeholder map, right? And understanding who are the persons responsible that can help us implement all of these great ideas. I think sometimes we establish commissions and don't have the right people in the room. So do we have the higher education institutions? Do we have the financial institutions? And we spoke a lot around ESG, in terms of how which is currently at the moment quite voluntary, but a lot of the banks locally and internationally are not going to find themselves investing, for example, in core assets, yet we're still in the transitional discussion phase at the moment. So what does it mean when we talk about, the state of funding, and how do we now develop the right type of financial models? How do we involve the likes of the BRICS Bank, who have got obviously their various mandates around the space? And again, I think what is quite important as we're going on and on around the energy mix perspective is when we then look at coal, remember the outcome here is net zero. Net zero does not necessarily mean that there is no coal or carbon emissions. It just means there's a right balance, that it is a sustainable environmental system. So how are we then, or how can we innovate further with existing coal? Can we still do that in producing clean energy sources from our fossil fuel that, from a net perspective, still find us in a sustainable and green-friendly space? So I think that becomes then critical when we talk about private sector players. We've got our fossil fuel contributors and even the green energy or green energy storage perspective players. Lastly, no, not lastly, important as well that we highlighted from an economic development journey. I think the other commissions touched on these innovation, or these BRICS hubs and so forth. But when we then look at the past, how the countries, and I think it's not unique to South Africa, are driving investment, we established these economic development zones. So I think what then becomes critical is, from a BRICS perspective, how can we establish these BRICS economic development green zones, investment zones, because I think what we saw, especially with the IPPs, as just another case point, in the investment of solar generation, these panels were being imported predominantly from China and other various countries all over the world. And then when we talk about localization, we're just talking about assembly plants. How are we going to be driving manufacturing in the country? Because that then creates a little bit more sustainability and journeys the transition a little bit more effectively as well. So back to the interventions, which I'll then lead to a close, leadership. We want to ensure that within the interventions going forward, we are considering infrastructure development. From there, we're talking about the generation, distribution, and storage. What does that mean for the SMEs in the ecosystem, the big players? It is quite a high costly CapEx intensive industry. How are we protecting the local businesses and existing fossil fuel industries in the interest of the green economy? The funding models, we want to ensure that we are involving all the financial institutions and they are aligned with existing policy to drive a more effective and more just transition so far as energy is concerned. A big component we discussed as well is around the climate risk. So what type of climate risk mitigations are we resolving for? We've got issues around water, we've got issues around the forestation and land degradation. We need to be able to protect those elements. And then digital platforms, I want to expand on that. I think that was nicely captured by the two commissions. And a very, very critical one is around corruption and the political environment, because I think a lot of the issues covered here tend to leak out and lose their momentum because of political or even geopolitical issues that tend to influence some very, very practical economic development objectives. Lastly, we want to ensure that we establish a BRICS Youth Cooperation Agreement that drives climate action. And that becomes a very, very important outcome where we establish this committee where all of us as BRICS states or members collaborate in this and become effective. I hope I captured that right. But thank you so much, colleagues. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luvuyo. We're going to move swiftly to the next two commissions. I'm going to give them an even shorter period because I am their immediate boss there in the office. They are from the NYD. So when you see me standing up, you must already say, thank you, I am done. So we're going to be moving to Micheline Mungai, who's going to be leading us on unlocking opportunities through the African Continental Free Trade Area. Let's please give Micheline a round of applause.
There we go. Shucks, yeah. Anyway, thank you, Deputy. Thank you. Cool. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Good morning or good afternoon, colleagues. Again, mine is to give the Commission reflections. So the Commission took place under, or rather focused its discussions under the following thematic areas. The first being using technology using technology in order to enable trade and open the market for Africa, to capacitate young people and the ecosystem to enable free communication. Secondly, using sports, arts, and culture as a catalyst for trade and social cohesion. Thirdly, using solar as a catalyst for skills transfer. And then fourth, using policy instruments to further underscore the African Continental Free Trade Area. Starting with the first one, there is currently a disparity amongst African states along infrastructure, and this further compounds information technology advances. This opens up a window opportunity amongst African Continental Free Trade parties and BRICS member states. Therefore, the Commission resolved, or rather proposed to the plenary, to create a platform that enables free trade, to use technology platforms, creating platforms that enable this free trade, such as technology platforms, using one currency to facilitate trade. Secondly, there be skills transfer programs amongst member states through exchange programs that will result in improving technology infrastructure. Governments should be transforming the value add, manufacturing, innovation, and infrastructure development amongst them. As we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, how far are we as South Africa, and then how far are we as fellow member states? And in taking that particular stock, where are the opportunity gaps for us to learn from one another? And then more importantly, what is then how can we leverage the African Continental Free Trade Area, that with BRICS? And then lastly, there is a need to tap into the vast manufacturing opportunities that persist in various key sectors, and more importantly, how young people can play a critical role in enhancing long-term industrial development. As such, there is an opportunity for key educational and skills programs to leverage from fellow BRICS member states. Then the next one is use sports, arts, and culture as a catalyst for trade and social cohesion. Sports is recognized as an element of culture and a major contributor to human development and strengthening national social cohesion and reapproach people. Therefore, we resolved, how do we use music to move? I think there was someone in the Commission that really put that point forward. Music is a tool and an instrument that we can use to connect ourselves across the various African countries. And then therefore, how do we also then use this to leverage the relationship between Africa and our fellow BRICS nations? And I think also adding to that, the questions were, are young people well informed when it comes to information property rights? So therefore, this leads us to the policy instrument. What is the reliability of common currency? Sorry, let me move to that. Here, the most important question that was asked when we talk about how do we use music to move, right? So then that obviously then moves us to the idea of the free movement of people, and I believe this has been a robust conversation amongst African member states. And again, this is an area that we can use and untap when it comes to policy positions. And then secondly, also around policy, there was a gap around raising awareness and ensuring that we have effective training programs around understanding these various instruments. One of the issues that was raised in the commission is that before young people could even take up these opportunities, do they even know what the opportunities are? So sometimes this results in young people being left behind. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, mostly around awareness and ensuring that young people are aware of these various opportunities. And then again, to solar, using solar as a catalyst for skills transfer. Our colleagues from Russia and China also raised the work that they've been doing in this particular space. So how do we work together with those particular countries to actually transfer skills to young people, but most importantly, bring it back to Africa and our fellow countries? One of the points that are raised is that we don't want to see a scenario where young people are unable to actually start their own productions around manufacturing or start their own productions around addressing the energy challenge in South Africa. So how do we make sure that we have effective partnerships that results in skills transfer? Deputy Chairperson, this happened all before you stood up. Thank you.
My darling, I must lobby the deputy ministers to give you double your salary. On point. Thank you very much, Ms. Micheline, for keeping to the time that was allocated to you. We're going to be moving to the very last commission, ladies and gentlemen, and that is strengthening multilateralism, and that is going to be led by Mr. Petule Siodi.
I hope I will be able to keep time. But nevertheless, let me just get straight to it. We had a robust commission, and then some of the key points that were discussed. One of them is that we thought that the recommendations was that the financial institutions like World Bank, IMF need some reform. Secondly, we need what was recommended was that we need to engage non-state actors to emphasize different issues. And then that BRICS countries should not only focus on climate change, but also on gender equity issues. And somebody was explaining to us the difference between gender equity and gender equality. So I think we learned a lot around that there. And then also promote a shared future for mankind in peace and democracy that will not be interrupted by other countries who do not form part of the BRICS. And then also we need to promote innovation within in BRICS countries. Also form BRICS Youth Council for exchange programs and also to learn other languages to bridge cultural barriers. Also, one of the most, another ambitious recommendation was that the UN Security Council needs some reform, and then also the BRICS Youth Council should train youth in diplomacy, which is something that came out very strongly, that young people, more especially within BRICS countries, need to be trained in diplomacy, because we come to these platforms and then sometimes things don't come out the way it's supposed to come because of lack of understanding how diplomacy works. And then also that the BRICS Youth Council should be established that as a structure that will look also into the previous resolutions and to ensure that those resolutions are implemented before making any new resolutions. So somebody was saying to us actually that I did a bit of research. From 2015 up until now, there were 96 resolutions that were made. And then today, again, we will be adding more resolutions. Maybe we'll get to 100. And out of all those 96 resolutions that were made from 2015 up until today, none of those resolutions have been actually implemented. So that is why then it becomes important that we have a structure of a BRICS Youth Council that will be able to coordinate the implementation of those resolutions. Of course, the establishment of the BRICS Youth Council is subject to other BRICS member states making sure that they go through their own processes in their own countries. The other part of it is that the young people within BRICS should be the voice of the mother body. And then that the other part of it is that we need a passport. So we do away with the passport within BRICS countries with the visa applications and so on. So that people within BRICS countries, as they constitute almost 40% of the world population, should be able to move freely within the BRICS countries, like it is happening in most in Europe. And then the other part of it was that we need the participation of students in international relations from the BRICS countries in the Forum of Students of International Relations, initiated by the Diplomatic Academy of Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Russia, and then to form a professional community of youth specialists. But we also indicated that this is something that needs to be agreed by all countries. What we don't need is one country dictating to all other member states as to what needs to happen, or waiting for one country to be inviting other countries. This should be something that other countries should be able to agree on. And then the last but not least is that we need to build support for multilateralism, for government to engage in cooperation between countries and practice real multilateralism. And then lastly, we should call for building multilateralism on the principles of multipolar world, including the dominance of one or two great powers, and creating enhanced collaboration between the states. I hope I still have my job. Sure, I did.
Thank you very much. We're definitely all keeping our jobs, ladies and gentlemen. We've come to the end of the report back on the commission. Let's please give our rapporteurs a hand of applause as they take their seats. We really do hope that this session was able to present to you the capabilities of young people that seek to be innovators, those that seek to drive positive change, conscious and deliberate young people who are focused on solutions and not necessarily problems. Very agile and deliberate young people that seek to push frontiers and break barriers. More importantly, a youth that appreciates that we are more impactful when we rise together and we all play our part. I think I just want to end it on note that we want to move freely between BRICS countries. We must abolish visas. I think we're free to go to Brazil. I think there's Russia and China who we need to still nudge in the right direction. But these are some of the interventions that come from young people that were participating in this particular session. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for the executive chairperson of the National Youth Development Agency Board, as she's going to be taking us through our declaration. I'm going to lobby chair because you are the chair. I'm going to wink sitting down so that I don't stand up and I disturb while you read the declaration. But ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Ms. Asanda Luwaka.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. And in the spirit of ensuring we remain disciplined, do feel free to nudge me once I've exceeded my time. Thank you very much. Let's get the formalities out of the way. Allow me to acknowledge the Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Mr. Kenny Morolong, who is also a former Deputy Chairperson of the NYDA Board and a former youth activist. We also have in our presence Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Mr. Alvin Bottas, delegates from the BRICS member states, media that is present, allow me to say all protocol observed. Before I get into the actual preamble, I think it's just important for me just to give, or rather to foreground this particular declaration. So colleagues, as you're aware, over the last couple of days, we would have deliberated on these respective topics. And so what we are presenting this afternoon will be a culmination of
what we would have coined a festival of ideas. We would have discussed or had the panel discussions on the 5 thematic areas. And what we are presenting now as the draft declaration would have culminated out of the commissions, the deliberations from the commissions, and which will be taken to, or which was rather taken to the heads of delegation. And tomorrow, this particular declaration will be presented to the ministers of youth. The meeting we'll be having with the ministers of youth and ultimately the heads of states summit that will be taking place. Now, the preamble of the draft declaration reads as follows. We, the youth delegation from the Federative Republic of Brazil, the Russian Federation, the Republic of India, the People's Republic of China, and the Republic of South Africa met in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal province in South Africa from the 18th to the 20th of July 2023 at the 9th BRICS Youth Summit under the theme BRICS and Africa Partnerships for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development, and Inclusive Multilateralism, to discuss the current state and future prospects of the development of youth cooperation in BRICS countries over a wide range of areas, including the following identified priority areas. 1, developing a partnership towards an equitable, just energy transition. 2, transforming education and skills development for the future. 3, unlocking opportunities through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. 4, strengthening post-pandemic socioeconomic recovery and the attainment of the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development. And last but not least, strengthening multilateralism, including working towards real reform of global governance institutions and strengthening the meaningful participation of women in peace processes. Furthermore, as we have entered into the decade of action of SGDs 2021 to 2030, we believe the BRICS countries should use their collective strengths to prioritize the development paradigm, using it as a guiding principle for our work as we continue intra-BRICS cooperation across areas such as youth development, trade, education, entrepreneurship, climate change, skills development and training, economic participation and transformation, health and well-being, social cohesion, and explore the establishment of the BRICS Youth Council, amongst many others. Therefore, recognizing the strength in terms of population and the economic power of the BRICS Association and the need for a fair and multipolar world, reaffirming the importance of the BRICS Youth Summit and believing it to be an appropriate forum for discussion of youth matters, understanding that our youth share common goals and yearnings, recognizing the efforts of all delegations to be present in the aforementioned date and time to discuss these important topics, bearing in mind that youth are key for the development and economic growth of all our economies, reiterating the importance of prioritizing youth development at national, regional, and global development agenda, as to empower youth development and global development, addressing that youth is a driving force for accelerating the SGDs and building a shared future for mankind, emphasizing the entrepreneurship and innovation are fundamental for the growth of any nation, and recalling the history and partnerships of BRICS summits. We present the following recommendations emanating from our meeting to ministers of youth and heads of states and governments of BRICS countries. And these are what we are presenting or what we will be presenting should this sitting agree to endorse. 1, on the issues of developing a partnership towards an equitable, just energy transition, we resolve or present the following. Firstly, protecting jobs and livelihood. The transition to a low carbon economy should not process that takes place throughout our lives, and therefore education systems need to be transformed to be able to support learners can acquire new skills and knowledge as the world changes. The second point is a focus on problem solving and critical skills or critical thinking. In the 21st century, the ability to solve problems and think critically is essential for success, and that education systems need to be transformed to focus on these skills so that learners can develop the ability to think for themselves and come up with creative solutions to the problems that exist. A focus on innovation and creativity was another point that was emphasized. And we would have discussed that in the 21st century, innovation and creativity are essential for a growing economy, and that the education system would need to be transformed to focus on these skills so that learners are able to develop and come up with new ideas and solutions. There must be a focus on digital skills. And by this, we are acknowledging once again that in the 21st century, skills or digital skills are essential for success, and that education needs to be transformed to focus on these skills so that learners and as well as young people are able to provide tangible solutions. There must be a focus on diversity and inclusion. Once again, in the 21st century, these are essential for success. Education systems need to be transformed to focus on these values so that all learners are included and part of the education system regardless of their background. The introduction of new technologies was another salient point. These technologies can be used to create more personalized learning experiences, to provide learners with access to experts from around the world, and to simulate real-world experiences. There was also a focus on problem-based learning, and here the particular approach is designed to develop learners' critical thinking and their ability to solve problems. The use of project-based learning, this is particularly important in the education space, and the approach is designed to develop learners' collaboration, communication, and problem-solving skills. There's another focus on social, emotional learning. This approach is essential for success in this 21st century as it helps learners to develop the skills they need to thrive in a complex and ever-changing world. Strengthening the intra-BRICS educational cooperation under the framework of existing institutions, including but not limited to your BRICS Technological and Vocational Education and Training Cooperation Alliance and similar institutions. There's a focus on expanding collaboration in higher education by accelerating mutual recognition, curriculum, credits, and diploma, creating joint degree programs, joint research programs and projects, summer schools and internships to promote mutual understanding and to elevate the intercultural competency and leadership of BRICS youth. We are equally calling upon concerted efforts and stronger financial, political, and material supports from government, NGOs, and the likes, especially with a focus of ensuring that this reaches the disadvantaged groups. And lastly, utilizing remote and hybrid learning platforms, as well as providing open access to education resource and transform learning modes to promote continuous learning, reskilling, and upskilling. The third pillar is on unlocking opportunities through the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And here we are proposing that there be a need to address infrastructural challenges, alive to the fact that Africa's infrastructure is underdeveloped, which could hinder the flow of trade, and that countries need to invest structures, roads, railway, ports, in order to make the African alive to the fact that Africa has skills gap, which could hinder the development of new businesses, and that countries should support young entrepreneurs through the implementation of cross-country incubator programs, and the need to strengthen international cooperation. We call on BRICS countries to strengthen cooperation and share experiences so as to achieve common development agenda. The fourth pillar is strengthening post-pandemic socio-economic recovery and the attainment of 2030 agenda on sustainable development. So here we would have proposed that under this particular pillar on economic recovery, we acknowledge that the global economy needs to be rebuilt in a way that is more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient. And this means investing in infrastructure, education, and social protection, as well as creating jobs that are decent, that are green, and that are inclusive. Under social protection, we acknowledge that social protection is essential to ensuring that everyone has access to essential services, that they can withstand shocks and stresses. These include social security, healthcare, education, and the likes. There should be research into youth migration trends, and analytical reports should be developed and prepared such that youth unemployment can be addressed through BRICS collaboration. On gender equality is essential for sustainable development. Women and girls should have the opportunity or the same opportunities as men and boys to participate in the economy and society at large. On climate change, we acknowledge that it is a threat to sustainable development and that we should take urgent action to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to and mitigate the impacts of climate change. On sustainable consumption and production, we acknowledge that we need to change the way we produce and consume goods and services in order to reduce our impact on the environment. On industry, innovation, and infrastructure, we acknowledge the need to enhance industrial innovation and infrastructure development, including investment in research and development, technological innovation, and the likes. On sustainable cities and communities, we acknowledge the need to work towards sustainable urbanization, youth development-oriented cities, and improved living conditions in cities and communities. And the last pillar, which looked at strengthening multilateralism, including working towards real reform of global governance institutions and strengthening the meaningful participation of women in peace processes. We acknowledge the fact to uphold the core and the international order based on international law. This includes to promote peace, development, equity, justice, democracy, and freedom, and non-interfere country without double standards. We also looked at building support of multilateralism and acknowledged that young people and different sectors of society need to engage in building a community of common future. On engaging with non-state sectors or non-state actors, government needs to build a more inclusive and effective multilateral system. Reforming global institutions, we acknowledge that these institutions need to be reformed in order to make them more effective and representative. This includes increasing the representation of developing countries and giving them a greater say in decision-making. We also looked at enhancing youth collaboration and innovation. And by this, the principles in promoting innovation, diversity, sustainability should be implemented amongst the youth to enhance collaboration, and that there needs to be an emphasis on strategic cooperation in advanced technology to be developed to provide affordable and equitable access to global citizens. And lastly, accelerating the youth exchange to be able to establish the BRICS community that includes experts and illustrates their best practices. And the last pillar then would have been to establish the BRICS Youth Council. The summit resolved on the creation of a coordinated structure for BRICS youth, such as the BRICS Youth Council, subject to the sovereign consultations of each member state. That, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the close of our very long declaration, culminating from those discussions. Thank you.
Let's give the executive deputy chairperson, my God, the executive chairperson of the National Youth of the National Youth Development Agency. How, Batung? I profusely apologize. I am the deputy chairperson, the executive deputy chairperson. I am going to be introducing a former deputy chairperson. So we've got a very close caucus here of deputy chairpersons who is currently the deputy minister in the presidency, Honorable Kenneth Morolong, who's going to be delivering a keynote. Can we please rise on our feet, ladies and gentlemen?
Thank you very much, Executive Deputy Chairperson. You know, earlier on I was saying to the chair that I feel a profound sense of nostalgia. I have said in many of these platforms, I have had the privilege of addressing many preceding BRICS Youth Summit, and it's really an honor for me to be here today. Deputy Minister Waters, the Executive Deputy Chairperson of the National Youth Development Agency, the board and the management of the National Youth Development Agency, the head of Chinese delegation, the head of the Brazilian delegation, the head of the Russian delegation, all delegates. Allow me to extend a word of gratitude to the National Youth Development Agency and other youth agencies of the BRICS countries. We really wish to thank you for inviting us to share our thoughts on the youth development discourse. We hope that our address will provide some valuable takeaways as you go back and give life to the resolutions that you have taken in this summit. In his address to the Chinese youth in Moscow in 1957, Chairman Mao took occasion to say the world is yours, as well as ours. But in the last analysis, it is yours. You young people, full of vigor and vitality, are in the bloom of life, like the sun at 8 or 9 in the morning. Our hope is placed on you. The world belongs to you. China's future belongs to you, close quote. We would like to repeat what Chairman Mao said all those years ago and emphasize that the world belongs to you and BRICS' future belongs to you. Program Director in 2005, addressing the Make Poverty History campaign, the world-renowned icon for peace and democracy, President Nelson Mandela, remarked that overcoming poverty is not a task of charity. It is an act of justice. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. And it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Lord, let your greatness blossom, close quote. We have deliberately evoked the spirit of Chairman Mao and that of Madiba to help us to properly communicate a message that BRICS' future belongs to you because it falls on your generation to be great as the youth section of the peoples of the BRICS nation. In his acclaimed novel, Things Fall Apart, Chinua Achebe observed that when we gather together in the moonlit village ground, it is not because of the moon. Every man can see it in his own compound. We come together because it is good for kinsmen to do so. Close quote. As a youth of the BRICS countries, You are gathered here today not because individually you don't have ideas. You are gathered as you are because ideas in themselves are not useful unless shared, tested, and reproduced in a higher form of quality that helps to elaborate effective policy. Program Director, in the rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape, BRICS is emerging as an influential bloc poised to reshape our international political economy. Among the many factors contributing to this rise should be the significant role played by the youth. I'm certain that this summit had occasion to explore what are the challenges and opportunities that could potentially frustrate and increase the voice of the youth, or rather the voice of the youth discourse about how to shape youth development policy in light of the continuously shifting global geopolitics. Equally, I hope that the summit has had more time properly to construct practical pathways by which BRICS member states can and could exploit the youth demographic dividend so as to meaningfully ensure that BRICS' future belongs to you as the youth. As you would be aware, BRICS nations host a considerable percentage of the world's youth population. The structure of the populations of India and South Africa, respectively, is constituted by more than half of the population being below the age of 25. The youth in Brazil, Russia, and China still account for a substantial proportion of the population, albeit with a slightly higher median age. This demographic dividend should and must be a potential catalyst for socio-economic growth. Program Director, access to information and communication technologies provides platform for us to be more informed and connected more than ever before. These pave ways for youth across the BRICS to engage more frequently, robustly, and collaboratively. As the youth, you should not be passive recipients of public policy decisions. Instead, you should and are actively influencing them, either directly through political participation or indirectly through civil society activism. Your active involvement, thus defined, is exerting enormous pressure on our respective government. I'm certain, Program Director, that youth activism is a necessary pressure point that leads government to elaborate policies that prioritize education, job creation, climate change, and social justice, issues that resonate with a broad section of our youth populace. The BRICS Youth Summit, therefore, becomes a moonlit village ground at whose expense you gather to share ideas and must guide actions of human beings through which you as a generations let your greatness blossom. Program Director, challenges of unemployment, inadequate educational opportunities, and social inequalities are some of the pressing issues that define youth experience, especially here in South Africa and Africa as a whole. Undoubtedly, while the youth are digitally connected, there's an increasing danger of information overload and sprawling spread of misinformation. I hope that this summit has a time to address these issues to provide government with a policy platform fully to harness the potential dividends for the youth and frustrate its negative impact. On a global scale, you have the possibility to significantly impact the geopolitical landscape through the kind of actions you take, issuing out of the policy platforms on which you may have agreed. As the BRICS youth, you have to insist on contributing to the digital economic policy that drives more inclusion and cooperation to enable you to fully to cooperate in global competition. Your innovation and entrepreneurial spirit presents an opportunity for the creation of a South-South supply chain that could strengthen the BRICS nations' position in the global digital landscape. Program Director, we stand at a time where BRICS is gaining more and more global significance, and as a beacon of hope in the global South. Our combined economic influence can play an important role in leading the global South towards a new era of finance and debt relief, focusing on sustainable growth, innovative financial mechanism, and debt relief. Sustainable growth is underpinned by not only economic expansion, but also by environmental preservation and social progress. By focusing on inclusive growth, BRICS can help reduce inequality within and between nations, thus creating a more balanced global financial structure. Significantly, what are the innovative financial instruments that can significantly reshape the financial landscape and secure youth participation on a grand scale? How can the youth of the BRIC countries and the Global South more broadly benefit from the financing that emanates from the New Development Bank? The New Development Bank can step forward an alternative source of funding for development projects for BRICS and other emerging countries. Program Director, enhanced financial cooperation between BRICS and countries of the Global South can foster a more equitable financial order. Through bilateral or multilateral trade agreements, currency swap arrangements, and collaborative investment projects, BRICS can help create a financial environment that supports the growth and stability of the Global South. In this regard, BRICS can help strengthen the economic resilience of the Global South by sharing best practices in areas like financial regulation and fiscal management. As the world grapples with the economic effects of global challenges such as COVID-19 pandemic and climate change, the role of BRICS could not be more critical than ever in building a more equitable and resilient global financial system. The world faces an existential threat of climate change, and with this in mind, I'm told that as a summit you have discussed the role of the youth in shaping climate change policies both within the bloc and in your respective countries. The climate change threat to which we earlier referred can only be confronted through activism led especially by the youth. The BRICS nations are key factors in the global energy landscape, both as consumers and producers of energy needs. The dual challenges of ensuring energy security and combating climate change require the world to transition to a more secure and sustainable energy system. This transition holds substantial prospective benefits for the youth. For the youth fully to take advantage of these new job opportunities, we will need to invest in education and skills development. This investment will have to focus on technical training in renewable energy technologies, as well as broader skills such as project management, policy analysis, and entrepreneurship. In this regard, a core of skilled youth will be more capable of realizing the economic opportunities that will flow out of the renewable energy interventions. The just transition also presents opportunities for entrepreneurship. Young people in BRICS nations can create startups that provide innovative solutions for renewable energy, energy efficiency, and climate resilience. To practically encourage entrepreneurship, financiers and government will have to develop new financial instruments and provide financial support and mentoring. The creation of a favorable regulatory environment and promotion of collaboration between startups, academia, and industry led decisively by our governments. Program Director, the just energy transition becomes a unique opportunity to create enormous value for our domestic economies and for the youth. Through the creation of green jobs, investment in education and skills development and training, promotion of youth entrepreneurship, and the involvement of the youth in policy making, BRICS can ensure that energy transition is just and equitable. Program Director, one of the most topical issues emanating from the challenges the world is currently going through is our imagination of how work and work environments will be organized in future. The future of work is rapidly evolving, driven by technological advancements, globalization, demographic shifts, and most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. These changes are drastically reshaping the way we work and are set to continue in the foreseeable future. Consequently, it is important for us to pause and think about what are the key pillars of the labor policy for future work to navigate these transformations effectively and ensure a sustainable and inclusive work environment for all. In an era where new skills are continually required to keep pace with technological advancements and changing job demands, the concepts of lifelong learning become exceedingly important. Skills development policies should encourage and facilitate continuous learning and skilling through the working life of employees. Priority must be given to initiatives such as accessible and affordable education and training programs, support for upskilling and reskilling, and the recognition and validation of non-formal and informal learning experiences. As technology becomes integral to almost all aspects of work, digital inclusion must be a key pillar of any future of work policy. This would mean ensuring that all individuals, regardless of their location or socioeconomic status, have access to digital tools and the internet. As the youth, you have to agitate for the formulation of policies that focus on expanding broadband infrastructure, promoting digital literacy and skills training, and reducing the digital divide to enable everybody to participate in the digital economy. Program Director, the traditional 9-to-5 work schedule is increasingly being replaced by flexible work arrangements, including remote work, flexible hours, and project-based work that has come to define the gig economy. As governments, we have to formulate policies that support this shift towards flexibility whilst ensuring that workers' rights are protected, including to elaborate regulations around working hours, overtime, and workplace safety for remote workers. Importantly, policies of the future should promote work-life integration, allowing individuals to balance their personal and professional responsibilities effectively. As the future of work evolves, social protection systems must be revamped to include workers in non-traditional employment arrangements, such as gig workers and freelancers. We have to imagine and develop policies that respond to the employee benefits, the establishment of a universal basic income, social safety nets. In this regard, we have to think about how the future of work policies deals with fair wages, access to healthcare, retirement benefits, and protection against discrimination and unfair treatment. The future of work should be inclusive, providing opportunities for all individuals, regardless of their gender, age, race, or disability, promotion of diversity and inclusion in the workplace, elimination of systematic barriers to equal opportunities, and ensuring fair recruitment and promotion of practices should form the central tenets of labor policies of the future. Social dialogue and collective bargaining remain crucial in shaping the future of work. Workers, employers, and governments should engage in constructive engagement to fashion the future we imagine. Honorable Deputy Minister, let us remember that the world is yours, young people, as well as ours. But in the last analysis, it is yours. You young people full of vigor and vitality are in the bloom of life. I have no doubt that using your vigor and vitality, you have proposed a policy platform necessary to manufacture informed debates in BRICS and elsewhere, from which practical interventions can be derived. Program Director, sometimes it falls on a generation to be great, as Nelson Mandela stated 2 decades ago. Hopefully, you have accepted the challenge that befalls your generation, owing to the set of difficulties currently facing the world. I'm certain that you'll accept the challenge and actualize it, necessarily because you have wittingly or unwittingly decided or selected to host your summit incidental to the occasion of President Nelson Mandela's birthday. I'm also certain that the heads of states of our respective countries are awaiting with keen interest the proposals that will issue out of these summits on a host of different topics, as you may have discussed. Please join me in wishing Madiba a joyous, posthumous birthday and commit in his honor that we can be that great generation that will let our greatness blossom. Obrigado, spasiba, say. Ke a leboga. Thank you very much.
Let's give the Deputy Minister another round of applause. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for reminding us that it falls on a generation to decide whether they want to be great or they want to be mediocre. The world is yours, the world is ours, it belongs to you, and it is all in your hands. This is a moment for all of us to decide what type of world we want to build. He says to us, refuse to be passive. Be the necessary agitation. Be a necessary nuance. With those few words, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be playing a farewell video clip of all the beautiful moments that we have captured in the past 72 hours. We hope that the video is family friendly, PG, nothing that happened last night. We don't want to see anything of that sort. Tech team, please make sure we're live on international television. We can't afford any mistakes. I'm just joking. It's only beautiful moments of the past few days that we have shared together. Let's press play and dim the lights.
My name is Rodrigo. I'm from Brazil.
My name is Cao Hongze, and I come from China.
Hi, I'm Dilbar from Kazan City, Russian Federation.
On behalf of the Republic of South Africa, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, the National Youth Development Agency, it gives me immense pleasure, after 4 years, having survived a global pandemic, to welcome you back to the 9th Annual BRICS Youth Summit.
We are very much grateful to for you to converge here today during the birthday of our first democratic president, the world-renowned and iconic Tata Nelson Mandela, who was very passionate about matters pertaining to youth and youth development.
Where is youth in all of this that is happening in BRICS?
As South Africa, and particularly the NYDA, we are of the firm view that there should be, and the ambassador would have spoken about the processes that have led us to the establishment of the BRICS National Youth Council.
So this summit provides us with an important platform to exchange insights, experiences, and also consolidate our positions in the lead up to the ministers' meeting, but more importantly, in the lead up to the summit. Because, as was said before, I won't repeat, we would like the summit to actually endorse the Youth Council.
It would be unwise not to look at how youth can add to the BRICS cooperation. The success of talented young entrepreneurs and technology innovation hubs across the world shows that young population can be drivers for change for many countries in the coming decades.
So let's consider what we, as young leaders and the hope of humanity, can offer.
For the work that done. We have officially arrived at the end of our program, ladies and gentlemen. At this point, we're going to request the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation to come and give us the closing address. May we please, he's already here. Can we please rise on our feet as we welcome Honorable Alvin Boertes.
Thank you very much. I've been given 30 minutes. So I'm going to use probably only 30% of that, because we must be conscious that we're speaking to young people. But Honorable Deputy Minister in the Presidency, my colleague, my comrade, Honorable Kenny Morolong, leadership of BRICS Youth Association, which was anchored by Raymond Matala, and then the leader of the South African delegation and the executive chairperson of the South African National Youth Development Agency, Mayor Sanda Luaucha, leader of the Brazilian delegation, Rodrigo Reis, leader of the Russian delegation, Ms. Anastasia Luyashina, leader of the Chinese delegation, Ms. Lui Kai, leader of the Indian delegation and the acting Consul General of India in Durban, Mr. Prem Saga, program director. This will not be a thesis. But as we bring this youth summit to a close, I'm deeply moved by the passion, dedication, enthusiasm, energy, and commitment displayed by the young people here today. First and foremost, let us take a moment to celebrate the commitments made by the BRICS youth, from discussions of just transition, education, and skills, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, socio-economic recovery, and the attainment of sustainable development goals and strengthening of multilateralism. Your dedication to provide positive change in our societies should be commendable. Ladies and gentlemen, BRICS should increasingly develop strategies that will effectively counterbalance volatility with vision, uncertainty with understanding, complexity with clarity, and ambiguity with agility. The South African foreign policy, this positioning is premised on 4 concentric circles, which speaks about Pan-Africanism, Global South solidarity, deepening cooperation with your more industrialized North, and the transformation of global governance institutions and multilateralism. It is therefore paramount, ladies and gentlemen, that young people must seize this occasion and this moment before yourselves. The significance of BRICS transcends individual countries and extends beyond the global South. Together, our young people today can play a more pivotal role in shaping the discourse of international affairs, advocating for a more equitable and just world order. And it is our submission that in uniting in action, you can amplify your voices on the plethora of issues, such as those raised by Deputy Minister Morolong, which include contemporary discussions on climate change. It includes the significance of the Sustainable Development Goals. And it includes, last and but not least, ladies and gentlemen, the coherence on the African agenda as anchored by the African Union 2063. Ladies and gentlemen, the Argentine-Cuban revolutionary, Che Guevara, reminded us what is a revolutionary. And he said, and I quote, "If you tremble with indignation every time an injustice is perpetuated, then you are a comrade of mine." So every time when unilateral economic blockade are leveled against the people of Cuba, and you tremble with indignation, then you are a comrade of mine. And every time when the UN Security Council resolutions on the inalienable rights of the Palestine people are trampled upon, and you tremble with indignation, then you are a comrade of mine. And every time, ladies and gentlemen, when the USA and the UK levels unilateral sanctions against the people of Zimbabwe, and you tremble with indignation, then you are a comrade of mine. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, comradeship, it's about solidarity. And it's about solidarity with the oppressed. Youth, by definition, is the future. It therefore implies, ladies and gentlemen, that the guarantor of the three pillars of BRICS of cooperation is you. We cannot always build the future for young people, but we can play a decisive role to shape and build young people for the future. Remember, they say the young person that say they can do, and the young person that says they cannot do, are the same, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about the choice that you make as a young people that would want to shape a future that are more inclusive of prosperity for all of us. The decision, ladies and gentlemen, by this youth summit to form the BRICS Youth Council should be welcome, and South Africa wants to give its unequivocal support thereof. I must immediately confess, ladies and gentlemen, and I've said this to Deputy Minister Morolong, that there's a number of deliverables out of our chairship of South Africa for this year. But the creation of a BRICS Youth Council was not necessarily one of them. It therefore implies, ladies and gentlemen, the foresight, the resilience and fortitude of these young people from the BRICS countries that must be commendable. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we are elated that unity of purpose and solidarity are no longer dreams, but as Patrice Lumumba said, it must be expressed through concrete decisions. You obviously have our undertaking that the key decisions of this youth summit will find its way to the occasion of the foreign ministers of BRICS. And equally so, ladies and gentlemen, it will be qualitatively taken through to the drafters of the BRICS summit that are convening in August, because the imperative of having this particular architecture cannot be overstated, because there has been historical decisions taken about the youth secretariat, but you could not have had a youth secretariat of BRICS youth if you don't have the pedestal of the organization of young people. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, we want to indicate that this BRICS Youth Summit takes place simultaneously with the BRICS Political Parties Plus Dialogue, represented by over 45 fraternal political parties from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And I can confirm today, ladies and gentlemen, as a delegate of that BRICS Political Party Plus dialogue, that the matter of the centrality of young people have found expression in the plenary declaration of that dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, we look therefore forward to working with young people to place BRICS at the forefront of shaping a new people-centered global society in a multipolar world. We find further inspiration as we close this session that was anti-revolutionary. Mandla! All right. That was not a mistake, ladies and gentlemen. Globalization, remember, was preceded by imperialism. And I wanted to quote one of the forefathers of the revolutionary struggle of the world when that happened. And it's Fidel Castro, who in 1959 said, ladies and gentlemen, the revolution is not a bed of roses. It is a struggle between the future and the past. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Will you please all rise on our feet? Can we please request that you hold hands with the people either on your left or on your right? Please, either, both. There are other people that don't have people on the left, on the right. We would sing, but they don't know it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a sign of solidarity. This is a sign of us committing ourselves as young people to working together. The Deputy Minister said to us, may unity of purpose locate us, may it carry us, and may the world that we want to see. I'm going to request you, ladies and gentlemen, to say thank you to all of the delegates in your respective language. Glory, thank you very much. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. Yeah. South Africa, where are your flags? We did it. We did it, ladies and gentlemen. I just have a few announcements to make. We're going to be going to lunch and we're going to nibble quite quickly because at exactly 2:30, we're going to be going on our excursion in KwaZulu-Natal to see the beauty and landscape of eThekwini. At exactly 5:30 in the afternoon, we hope and beg that you would have been ready for the delegates network dinner in the evening. Let's go and enjoy ourselves. Thank you very much.
My name is Rodrigo. I'm from Brazil.
My name is Cao Hongze, and I come from China.
Hi, I'm Dilbar from Kazan City, Russian Federation.
On behalf of the Republic of South Africa, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, the National Youth Development Agency, it gives me immense pleasure, after 4 years, having survived a global pandemic, to welcome you back to the 9th Annual BRICS Youth Summit.
We are very much grateful to for you to converge here today during the birthday of our first democratic president, the world-renowned and iconic Tata Nelson Mandela, who was very passionate about matters pertaining to youth and youth development.
Where is youth in all of this that is happening in BRICS?
As South African, particularly the NYDA, we are of the firm view that there should be, and the ambassador would have spoken about the processes that have led us to the establishment of the BRICS National Youth Council.
So this summit provides us with an important platform to exchange insights, experiences, and also consolidate our positions in the lead up to the ministers' meeting, but more importantly, in the lead up to the summit. Because, as was said before, I won't repeat, we would like the summit to actually endorse the Youth Council.
It would be unwise not to look at how youth can add to the BRICS cooperation. The success of talented young entrepreneurs and technology innovation hubs across the world shows that young population can be drivers for change for many countries in the coming decades.
So let's consider what we, as young leaders and the hope of humanity, can offer.